Good morning. The grace and peace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you all. Let us worship God together.
Dear Lord, in this pandemic time of COVID-19, we come in your presence as we are about to start this service. Please forgive us our sins as we forgive us those who trespass against us. We lift our hearts unto you, Lord, as you are our hope, in the name of Jesus Christ. Wethembekile Jehova, uphakeme moya oyingcwele. Akekho njengawe Jesu wami. Usiyalele ezwini lakho ukuba size kuwe sonke thina abantu babulalekayo, basindwayo imithwalo, uza kusinika ukuphumula. Sithabathe idyoko yakho, siyithwale. Sifunde kuwe ngokuba unobulali, uthobekile ngenhliziyo. Lord, you said, those with broken hearts must pray together and agree on what they want. We must ask, it shall be given. Seek, it shall be found. And knock, it shall be opened unto us. Give us strength to overcome this coronavirus and take control. Lord, hear our prayer and give us hope in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
This morning I would like to invite you to stay with me in the liminal space between Easter and Pentecost. The group of disciples are gathered in the upper room. In the beginning it was a hiding in fear. The risen Christ had to make his way through locked doors. But then it became a hiding filled with great expectations. The risen Christ promised an outpouring of Spirit, but it would take another 40 days until they were ready to receive the gift. It was a reflection by David White on hiding that helped me to notice that there can be a positive side to hiding from the world. To giving yourself some time to be alone before stepping forward into the light. Indeed, timing is important. There can be too much too early. The story of the Apostle Peter, which we recently explored together, is a good example for this. But there are many more other examples one can think of to illustrate the importance of a period of hiding. 9 months were hidden in the womb before seeing the light of this world. To emerge too early can be dangerous. And from then on, we go through different phases in our lives. The timing for each stage is important. With experience, we learn to not to grasp, but to wait, to trust, to receive. The book of nature reveals the same wisdom. A seed sown needs time to grow in the darkness of the soil before it dares to show itself to the sun. And even the mysteries of our faith know about the need for hiding and waiting. 3 days Jesus is hidden in the darkness of the tomb before the tomb becomes a womb, birthing him to new life. Jesus speaks about it as a sign of Jonah given to us. We all need in some ways to be swallowed by a whale once in a while, experience the darkness and trust that the tomb will become a womb. The Quiet Freedom Day celebrations during lockdown invited us to remember the isolation and darkness Nelson Mandela had to suffer. He was forcefully hidden from the world, but able to give his solitude direction and promise. And what a leader he was when he stepped into the light. Now, as this world and this country slowly emerge from the lockdown, we will have to see if the timing was right. There can be too much too early. Right now, I'm not thinking about the real dangers to our healthcare system or our economy. I'm more concerned with the question if our hiding was not just driven by fear, but also by the need to prepare ourselves for a new way of being in communion with the earth and with each other. Are we ready to welcome a spirit that wants to set us free, not from each other, but for each other? A spirit that wants to lead us to the full truth. It is not just the truth of how we have failed in the past, but also the truth of a greater love and a greater spirit, ready to comfort us and birth us into a new chapter of our lives. David White suggests that hiding, and I quote, is creative, necessary, and beautifully subversive of outside interference and control. Hiding is a radical independence necessary for our emergence into the light of a proper human future. Are we ready to emerge into the light and reimagine community? I would like to do this with you, not just in conversation with the writer of the Acts of the Apostle, but also with the artist Alberto Giacometti, and one of his sculptures that speak to me about the challenge of imagining community. The sculptures of Alberto Giacometti explore what it means to be a human being in the world. With time, he created figures that were more and more reduced. It was as if he was looking for the essence of what it means to be a human being. He valued sincerity and honesty, and his minimalistic approach assisted him to shed what he considered to be deceptions and lies. This is communicated through the nakedness of the figures. His human figures are always fully present. They dominate the space around them. Their restlessness speaks of a desire to be in relation. Sitting, standing, or walking, they always exhibit a strong inner concentration. Do the big and heavy feet speak of being grounded or rather burdened? Do the thin and lengthy bodies speak of vulnerability or rather of confidence? Does the ruggedness of their skin speak of fragility or rather resilience? The picture beside me shows a sculpture titled The City Square from 1948. It speaks to me about the difficulties and possibilities that come with inhabiting the same space and place. For Giacometti, art was, in his own words, only a means of seeing. We see 4 walking men and 1 standing woman. What kind of dynamics do we pick up? Though those figures are static, they are far from calm and peaceful. There's a tremendous potential for both meeting and missing each other. The distance between them varies, but they all seem to have the same autonomy. Are they simply alone or rather lonely? Giacometti admitted that he found it impossible to capture a figure as a whole. I quote, "The more one insists, the more the details disappear." If this is true of one single figure, how much more difficult must it be to picture a gathering of individual figures coming together to create community? This is what Luke attempts to do when he tries to record the events of Pentecost and presents us with what Fulbert Stefensky coined the birth certificate of the Church, inviting us to imagine what a genuine faith community could look like. I'm reading from the Acts of the Apostle, chapter 2, verses 42 to 47. They met constantly to hear the apostles teach and to share the common life, to break bread and to pray. A sense of awe was felt by everyone, and many portents and signs were brought about through the apostles. All the believers agreed to hold everything in common. They began to sell their property and possessions and distribute to everyone according to his need. One and all, they kept up their daily attendance at the temple, and breaking bread in their homes, they shared their meals with unaffected joy as they praised God and enjoyed the favor of the whole people. Day by day, the Lord added new converts to their number. Biblical scholars have made us aware that Luke is probably describing more an ideal than a reality. To what extent did the writer Luke experience something similar to the sculpturer Giacometti? As he tried to capture not only a figure as a whole, but a community as a whole, he might have also had to realize that the more one insists, the more the details disappear. Luke gives us a kind of summary statement, and certainly utopian in character. To get the details, we need to go to the letters of the Apostle Paul. There we get a much more nuanced and realistic picture of the early church. There were plenty of conflicts to be resolved. They did not have everything in common. Eating together was difficult, and even worship services created divisions instead of bringing people together. The usual power plays. Luke then presents us not so much with a beautiful past, but a beautiful dream, an imagined future of a community committed to learning to share more deeply who they are and what they have. Luke's composition, just like Giacometti's creation, reminds us of a fascinating paradox in the creative process. A work of art can reach its ultimate completion not by adding more and more to it, but by being able to take away more and more until one is left with the bare essentials. According to Luke, the essentials are fourfold, centered in a deeper sharing of teaching, fellowship, breaking of bread, and prayer. But there is an additional edge to Luke's account, which one tends to overlook or prefer to ignore. We read that they had everything in common and even began to sell some of their possessions to make sure that people would have what they need and not just what society thinks they deserve. How does one translate such a dream of sharing into our present context? Here is a first little clue. Sharing is not so much about what we are able to give, but more about what we're able to let go of. Giacometti used to take silent walks with Samuel Beckett. They shared a certain madness in their striving about capturing the complexity of human life. Beckett once commented, and I quote, "Ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail better." This would be a rather liberating motto for imagining community. Fail again, fail better. It is far from the realization of the kind of ideal of community Luke proposes, but certainly more in sync with Paul's actual experience of church. But more importantly, the willingness to fail better shows that one has not given up on Luke's beautiful dream. But one knows that in some ways, or rather in many ways, we will never quite arrive. And of course, one's commitment to fail better relies on the grace of being allowed to fail again and again. This is why the Pentecost Spirit is considered to be both a great comforter and a bold advocate. Our journey is not about perfection, but compassion. It is even more about being patient and compassionate with oneself, especially when holding on to such high ideals of community. Fail again, fail better. How could such a vision of failing again and of failing better look like? It was the German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer who spoke about the porcupine dilemma. He presents us a parable that speaks to the challenge of imagining a community that does not stop striving towards balancing both our need for privacy and intimacy, for autonomy and vulnerability, for presence and absence. Schopenhauer's parable offers a helpful contrast to Luke's vision. It's a little bit more realistic, less ambitious, maybe a bit disillusioned and cynical, but in my mind, a good stepping stone. This is how the story goes. On a cold winter's day, a group of porcupines huddled together to stay warm and keep from freezing. But soon they felt one another's quills and moved apart. When the need for warmth brought them closer together again, their quills again forced them apart. They were driven back and forth at the mercy of their discomforts, until they found the distance from one another that provided both a maximum of warmth and a minimum of pain. In human beings, the emptiness and monotony of the isolated self produces a need for society. This brings people together, but their many offensive qualities and intolerable faults drive them apart again. Optimum distance that they finally find that permits them to coexist is embodied in politeness and good manners. Because of this distance between us, we can only partially satisfy our need for warmth, but at the same time, we are spared the stab of another's quills. Schopenhauer highlights the need to manage the space between each other carefully. In contrast to Luke, he focuses on the dangers of intimacy. He's realistic about the fact that the closer we get, the more vulnerable we become, and the more wounded we can get. Too little space puts us at risk. Too much space isolates us. The danger is to become cynical, to settle for politeness and good manners. And so we keep moving back and forth from one another, always in search for the right distance that will enable us to feel both safe and connected, both cared for and respected. There's nothing static about Giacometti's sculpture. Depending on one's perspective, the angle from which one looks at it, a different dynamic is suggested. My initial question remains: will they find or miss each other? Will we find or miss each other? Giacometti's figures seem to be guardians of each other's loneliness. The pandemic has made us aware of the constant need to negotiate distance and closeness in a way that protects the individual and at the same time nurtures community. Building and nurturing community always involves the difficult process of negotiating such boundaries. So let us do so by holding on to both Luke's utopian dreams and Schopenhauer's sobering realism. Beckett's invitation to fail again and to fail better places us somewhere in between. In between exaggerated expectations that that leave us exhausted, and a cynical disillusionment that has stopped expecting anything. But the truth is, we need Luke's daring vision. We cannot do without such magical beginnings as Pentecost and Freedom Day. And we also need to believe that human beings do not only become beautiful by what they do, but also by what they dream of. And we're not alone in this and with this. There is the Pentecost spirit. She does not point us back to the Ten Commandments, and she does not confront us with a new catalogue of demands. She rather points us to each other, to see and to notice. Amen.
Good morning, everyone. Robert has asked me to give a little message from here, from my quarantine in my woman cave, which I'm lucky and blessed to have, about this particular time. And as we head towards different stages of lockdown, this catastrophic event has brought humanity to our knees, has caused terrible suffering and pain. People dying alone, older people being left to die on their own. It's unimaginable, the suffering and pain it has brought to families and loved ones, the hunger, the starvation, the loss of jobs, the uncertainty, the inability to visualize a future when this is over, if it ever is over. But at the same time, the most extraordinary thing has happened, and this is what keeps me going, is that the real heroes and in the world at the moment are just ordinary people across Cape Town, across South Africa, across the world. Ordinary people have reached out and are helping each other. I am amazed by the WhatsApp groups that I have on my phone with people just every day getting up, taking food, middle-class people reaching out and understanding this is the time now for us to do what we've always supposed to have been doing and what you in this community have always done, which is to make life a better place for those who are denied that opportunity. The kitchens that have sprung up on the Cape Flats, the people in the NGOs who have withstood, I think, the overreach of the police and the army, the leadership that our president has shown is something for which I'm deeply grateful. We haven't got it right and it's not perfect. Our doctors, our scientists, our nurses, our frontline emergency workers, our essential services people, the people who collect our bins, all of them, every time they go out, they place themselves at risk for the rest of us. I would like to hold that in mind and give thanks for this extraordinary courage inside ordinary human beings who at this point have done and lived out exactly what it is we're meant to do, which is we are meant to be with each other, help each other, reach out to each other when we can. And this virus with a crown, this triumphant virus with her crown, has made us see this. But she's unforgiving. She takes who she wants. And the only way we can withstand this wake-up call, this deep wake-up call on a physical level and on a spiritual level, is to look at where we will find comfort and where we will find help, and that is with each other. So I'd just like to thank you always for the opportunity to talk to you, although I don't know why Robert seems to think I have anything interesting to say. But I do love you all very much, and I know that all of you and a lot of you are working exactly and doing the things that all the other people around me are doing. So I thank you for that. I wish you peace. I wish you peace of mind. I hope that this is an opportunity for us to recalibration, greed, when is enough enough, and for us to make sure that it's possible to live in a world where we all have enough, and where health and education and the things that make us beautiful human beings that we are enable us to reach our total and full potential. So thank you all very much for just indulging me every time. This mad journalist holed up in her office trying to bring down the judiciary. Take care, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
God, our healer, we cry to you from our world that is in turmoil, burdened by illness and by uncertainty. A virus is amongst us that unites us all as it spreads ever wider across the globe, ever deeper into communities. We have realized anew how connected we all are. For that we are grateful. Yet we are seeing also how divided we are, those at risk or not, those that have means or not. Jesus, you inspired your early followers to share their bread with glad and sincere hearts. If we have enough, open our eyes so that we too may share with glad and sincere hearts with those around us. Comfort for those who are afraid of what may come. Fellowship to those who are lonelier than ever in the lockdown. Bread with those who are hungry and suddenly without means to earn anything. God, in your mercy, listen to our prayer. We cry to you, God, on behalf of our sisters and brothers, those in the front line of service or of risk at this time, those with the burden of leading us through this uncharted course, and especially those in desperate need with nowhere to turn to. Holy Spirit, give peace and hope, give wisdom and comfort. Show us your way and hold us all in your embrace. Amen.
And now, may the road rise to meet you, and may the wind be always at your back, and may the sun shine warm upon your face, and the rains fall soft upon the fields of your life, and may God hold you in the palm of her hand until we meet again. Amen.